afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Bristol Motor Speedway for the second round of the 60 Plus Racing Adventures. We'll wait and see on that front, and hopefully I will be joined by him in a moment. But yeah, it's good to be back on 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Let's have a look at the schedule for this season. Anyway, hopefully that's a bit better, but it keeps changing. So yeah, it's changing without me asking it to. So I don't know what. Yes, we'll be on with qualifying in a moment. 3 minutes to go in the practice session. And there they are on the circuit. That's the view. Looks very busy, doesn't it? Just 12 of them out there at the moment, but looks very, very busy as it always does. That's Bristol, no matter how. No matter how. Right, hopefully that will be a bit better. And no, it's not going to be any better. Right. This is a bit of a nightmare. But anyway, we'll be on with the qualifying in a moment. The previous races, we should probably go through those actually as well, just before we go on any further as well. Because yeah, as I say, we've just had the one round so far this season, and so yeah, I'll just run through those. On the of course, as I mentioned, victory for Mike Grandy in the previous round. Jack Turner was in second place. Nicholas Beasley and Randy Schumacher tied on points at the end of that round. Eugene Clark got in the top five. John Marino just outside of it. Wally Moulsby, John Hay, Robert Love, Jerry Kerr rounded out the top 10. And then Bruce Poole, Chiji Reese and Frank Butler rounded out the field who were there for Rockingham. The 13 of them who were there. Now the seconds come to an end in qualifying in a moment. Practice in a moment, and then we'll be on with qualifying. Still trying to stop my mic from going quiet. Every word that I say, the thing gets quieter. So I don't know what that's all about, but anyway, that's what's happening at the moment. So the end of practice and the start of qualifying. 5 minutes as always in this series, and just 2 laps. So it's the same for every round. Yeah, no matter how long the circuit is. Every race, by the way, has a mandatory pit stop as well in this series. It's 1 bonus point for no incidents. That's how we've got Randy Shoemaker and Douglas Beasley on the same amount of points after that latest round. And you can take 2 drop weeks as well across the course of the season. As JC Hay, 15.0, currently his best time. That's going to push him down to 4th place. Randy Shoemaker moves on up again. John Payne currently sets the pace, 14.7 for him. Beasley, 15.1 for him. See where that gets into in this session. 9th place should be. Frank Butler and Bruce Poole, the only others to not set time yet. Only 16 from Butler, but he'll have another lap to improve. Oh, and Bruce Poole slides his way through 1 and 2, and that's going to be an end of that, unfortunately for him. So that'll be a lot for qualifying. That would be the 12 already setting their times because it's such a short racetrack. I'm just going to go quiet for a moment while I try and sort this out on my end and leave you with the sights and sounds of Randy Shoemaker just for a moment. Okay, hopefully I've managed to fix it now, and we'll be all good for the remainder. But hopefully, yeah, that'll be fine now. Randy Shoemake just continuing to make his way around. It's probably a good use of qualifying, isn't it? Really? It's a long set. Apparently not now. I don't know how to fix it, to be honest with you. To continue is very annoying and changing our settings every week. That's going to be a bit fun, I suppose. A few seconds remain. I'll bring you the grid. Here it is for this second round of the Six Plus Racing Adventures from Bristol. John Payne, who will take the start from the front ahead of Mike Grandy. Neil Canning is in third place, not a name I've seen too much of recently, actually. Fourth place is Rick Helms. Randy Shoemake, John Marino then share row 3. David Traynor and JC Hay are then on row 4, with Douglas Beasley and Jerry Kerr on row 5. And Frank Butler and Bruce Poole will round out the field in 11th and 12th. Just getting ready. To configure really off the start here before they grid up. Now they'll be off and away. From Bristol. It's going to be very, very short indeed before the pace car pulls down left-handed into the mid lane. Thought that the stop would have to be done under caution, but actually we had a very long green flag run, and so the mandatory pit stop we did end up seeing a few actually make their mandatory pit stop in green flag conditions, which is unusual. Let's see what tonight brings as the pace car rounds 3 and 4 and comes into pit lane. It's time for round 2 of the 60 Plus Racing Adventures Truck Series here this season. Green flag from Bristol. John Payne leads them around first time round ahead of Mike Grandy at the end of lap number 1 here from Bristol. To a very good start. Douglas Beasley goes backwards, not literally, but losing places off the start here, further down the field, to 11th in fact. Canning putting the pressure on Grandy actually early on. To be seen whether these guys are going to go out hard early or whether they're going to just take things carefully early on, knowing that they might have a long way to go on these tyres. But not on this first green flag run anyway. Caution flag flies early on. So this is what happened at the beginning with Douglas Beasley. That's why he lost. Frank Butler goes for a slide, and there's the yellow flag. Spins one way and then the other, and into the tyre barrier for Frank Butler. So trying to get back going again as quickly as possible, not to lose a lap, but it's very difficult to do that, to get back going again without losing a lap, and we're under the first caution here from Bristol very early. Start from John Payne though, I've got to say, a good launch from good launch from him. Managed to see off Mike Grandy very quickly off the beginning, actually. Neil Canning was pretty punchy as well off the start, actually. Was looking at passing Grandy, but couldn't quite manage it. Lutz will stay on top of the pace car as Butler is one lap down. We do have a lucky dog system in this series. That might help Butler to get back onto the lead lap at some point in the near future. If there is another caution pretty quickly after this one, then he'll certainly be able to use that to get back onto the lead lap again and perhaps get a good result here tonight. Race of the season at Rockingham, hopefully finish a little bit higher than that here tonight. Just about 8 laps gone from Bristol, and John Payne and Mike Grandy are going to bring themselves to the third and fourth corner, the restart zone, and we'll be back underway here in a moment as John Payne comes out of the final corner and waits and goes. Green flag waves again from Bristol, but it's a good restart from Grandy. Outside line in the gold car, and is that going to give him the chance to get the lead here? Outside again through 3 and 4. He'll be ahead of the line, and that, I think, is his first lap led here tonight, but Payne holds pretty firm on the inside, runs around the bottom and keeps first place. Keeps first place very nicely, so John Payne leads after 10 laps and holds off that charge from Mike Grandy on this restart. Glad to say that. Unfortunately, Dan Field not been able to join me, but Nathan Richards has been here tonight in the 60 Plus Racing Adventures Truck Series. Good evening, Nathan. Racing from Bristol. Good to have you alongside me, and good restart from John Payne. Good start to this race for the front guys, certainly. As Grandy gets a little bit loose, it's going to be a fun race from Bristol for sure as we're approaching 15 laps gone tonight.
Indeed. Good evening, you. Good evening, everybody. I'm very new when it comes to oval racing, but I've got to say, from the oval racing I've watched in the past, it does provide some really good racing, and I'm sure that the results here is constantly going to switch as each lap goes by, as Neil Canning goes up into second place, getting ahead of Mike Grandy. But as you know, Ewan, I think any moves made here at this point probably aren't that beneficial when we come to the end of the race in around 50 laps time.
To go in the race of patience, certainly, as we go on board with David Traynor here in car 38. Sitting behind Rick Helms. You can see from this camera just the banking at Bristol. So steep round this circuit. It's what makes this circuit so special. Half mile, of course, here at Bristol, as well as Canning now ahead of Grandy. Starts to put the pressure on John Payne. They're nose to tail for the lead as they pass 15 laps here from Bristol already. And look at that, Canning just going a little bit higher there through 3 and 4, looking for the lead over the line again for another time, and he is really putting that pressure on at the moment.
Yeah, certainly, and I think that's what we'll see all race. Drivers just trying to put a little bit of pressure on, trying to disrupt others and, you know, force them into mistakes, because when you make a mistake here, you end up in the wall or you end up spinning out, that is pretty much your race done and dusted, at least for the time being, until there's any sort of cautions and everybody catches back up. But for the likes of Canning here, he will be hoping to force Payne into a mistake and possibly go for a move himself. Went for the high line there through onto the next lap of the race, then tucks back to the inside, and you can just see he's darting everywhere. And you know, Payne's always got to be looking in his rearview mirror, looking where Neil Canning is looking to dive the car, but then also that can play into the hands of the likes of Grandy and Helms, as they'll just be watching on and watching what happens between our top two. And as we know in oval racing, it's very common that our top two can come together, so Grandy and Helms will be waiting for something to happen to jump into their favour.
They're all just on top of each other at the moment, basically, in this race, and it's a fantastic start. But how is Canning going to find his way past? The concern will be that this is actually a very, very difficult circuit to pass on at the moment, and could prove to be a problem a little bit later on in the race. But let's see. Canning and Payne run 1 and 2 still. Trainer very close to Rick Helms as well, who's currently holding on to 4th place. You can see Helms just seeing a little gap open in front of him right now. Nothing too major, although 5 tenths turns into 6, and it will continue. The race as it approaches half distance, are approaching 1/3 distance, but that mandatory pit stop is going to be coming up on the very, very soon as well, and they're all going to be hoping that there's going to be a caution. But you know, they'll have to be thinking about that mandatory pit stop as well as we approach half distance. Not necessarily for the tyre life, because it's not a very long race. However, it's basically just to satisfy the rules, really, and see maybe if Canning tries to use that to pass John Payne. Could be an interesting strategy aspect of this race.
Yeah, certainly. And I think as well, if the caution does come out when that pit stop phase gets underway, that kind of does get rid of that worry for drivers, not knowing if, you know, they're going to pit a lap too early or a lap too late. And of course then, you know, it can really harm your race. So if that caution comes out and they're in the pit stop phase, you can just go into the pits as you normally would anyway, and not lose or gain any time. But as we can see further back, Jerry Kerr has ran into a slight issue, 2 seconds back from 9th place being Douglas Beasley. And of course, in oval racing, once you lose around a second to a second and a half, it then becomes so difficult to get back involved with things, and it's just going to allow Jerry now just to keep dropping further and further back, because that slipstream is such a key factor when it comes into oval racing. Of course, as you can see, the top 10 all separated by a couple of tenths. Max, of course, the furthest gap at the moment is Randy Shoemake in P6, around 7 tenths back from David Traynor. But then, of course, you've got the likes of John Marino there looking to try and make a move, and only 10th back from JC Hay.
It's all stacking up back here at the moment. And Marino will just continue to apply some pressure. There he goes, inside line. Oh, into 1 and 2, very close. But you've got to be aggressive at Bristol, and JC Hay goes up the circuit. Here comes Bruce Poole as well, into 3 and 4. But JC Hay around the outside is going to be able to hold on to that pretty easily. You can see the view from Poole again, who is just in 9th at the moment and trying to get past JC Hay. That was his opportunity, really, to try and follow John Marino, but he couldn't quite do it in the end.
Yeah, certainly. And I think it becomes, so, in some cases, especially in the midfield, so difficult to make moves. So if you get yourself presented with an opportunity, as we do see Mike Grandy going into 2nd place, making use of that opportunity, jumps ahead of Neil Canning. If you can't get moves done when they're presented, it really does put you in a bad position, because you know, at that point you're not going to find any moves. There's not that many types of overtakes you can make on these oval circuits, whereas on normal tracks you can make overtakes on straights, left, right-handers. Here you've got the straights, which never easy to make a move, and then of course that oval left-hander, which we could see there for Mike Grandy, just up the inside, gets a better run out of the corner, and then jumps into P2. But of course these results can easily, and these positions can easily swap round as lap goes on, as I think there's a couple of drivers looking to head into the pits.
Canning's going in, so he's maybe gone out even a bit too hard. I said the tyre wear wouldn't be actually a big factor, but maybe it is going to be, because 35 laps, we're nearly on halfway. This is exactly when you'd expect to see a pit stop, and he's decided to come in. The problem, though, with pitting at Bristol is that you actually lose just so many laps. Be a couple of laps, I think, lost as Canning drives down the first part and then down the second. I think we've got the rules enforced that you have to drive down both, even if your pit box is only on one side of the circuit, but that can always be confusing as well. See, Canning dropped right to the back of the field here, and we'll see where he gets to by the end of the day, but it's an early stop, and he'll be hoping now to undercut these two, Payne and Grandy, who lead 1 and 2.
Yeah, certainly, and it's going to cause some right headaches for our drivers when, you know, there's a massive gap in terms of the laps you're going to have. Like Neil Canning will be 2 laps down here, and then of course when other people are pitting and other people who are also laps back are going to try and overlap each other, it can get quite confusing. So that's something that's going to factor in to the next few laps, and the drivers that are more in tune and the drivers that are more suited to this format and this type of racing will certainly benefit after this pit stop phase is completed, as JC Hay also heads into the pit lane from 7th place. Douglas Beasley as well in, along with Jerry Kerr, so that's 8th, 9th and 10th all in the pits. And then, of course, the top 7 still to enter that pit lane, as Neil Canning now will be looking to get a couple of the cars that are just heading into the pit lane.
That's the goal always of this undercut. But again, I said at the start of this broadcast as well, every time we come here to Bristol, and we've broadcasted the last few of them here on RaceSpotTV, we always say, well, you'd hope to be making stops under caution rather than under the green flag, but that's not been the case, and it's happened again here. That was very close as Helms comes in along with Bruce Poole and the rest of them in the pit lane. Neil Canning there really close with Randy Shoemake trying to unlap himself here. There goes David Traynor into the pit lane, and Canning will now be free. But that's the problem with being on the undercut strategy here. If you find yourself caught up in a bit of traffic like that, then you do end up losing quite a bit of time, and that might have cost Canning some time there.
Yeah, certainly, and of course momentum and speed is so key in these races, so drivers aren't just going to choose to slow down and let you pass. They're going to still fight for their positions when they're in battles with other drivers, so that definitely would have costed Neil Canning some time, as we do see John Payne now making his way into the pit lane, of course, from the race lead. We'll be going in, and then we'll drop, of course, a couple of laps back, but well, I think the fact that everybody's pitted down from 3rd below means that he should come out in and around that position he was in originally, as Mike Grandy as well from the race lead will come in, and this will be interesting. Who's going to benefit from the undercut? Who's going to benefit from that overcut? That being between Grandy, Payne and Canning.
Fascinating part of this this circuit, and there's so many different laps to pit on here, and with different ways of figuring it out. 45 laps just about gone here from Bristol as Grandy comes into the pit lane. John Payne in as well. At the moment, Canning, I think, would be the leader on as he comes back round, but Helms is doing okay as well.
Yeah, certainly, I think he's actually net ahead, isn't he? Because I think Helms has already been into the pit lane. Sorry,
yeah. Oh, and Grandy's out of fuel, I think. Grandy has miscalculated this because he's going so slowly, and he's surely out of fuel here. Mike Grandy, who's led this race at times, he's been up towards the front. He won last week. He's run out of fuel, I think. He's only just made his box. My goodness me. That's a huge miscalculation. Not entirely sure what John Payne's doing at the moment. But Grandy now finally comes to a stop. But look at the time he will have lost. He's down to 4th position. I'm surprised it's not worse for him because he was so slow on the pit entry there as he run out of fuel towards the entry. That was a rare mistake from Mike Grandy. There was Rick Helms coming back out the pit lane. This was a few moments ago, and he got just in front of Neil Canning, and he's now running 1 and 2 with the 41, battling for the race lead in the final 25 laps.
Certainly, and what's happened to John Payne, down to 10th, has completed that pit stop and he's 2 laps back, so something has not gone well at all there for John Payne in the number 2, as here is our battle for the race lead, and it's going to be Neil Canning up the inside as they make their way through to cross the line once again. 49 of 75 laps have been completed. Neil Canning leads ahead of Rick Helms, and Douglas Beasley was down in 9th place earlier on, now up into 3rd, so this has been a great recovery by the number 9 car.
Yeah, it certainly has been. I mean, oh, and the spin! Rick Helms, doesn't quite go around. He very nearly did. He drops to 3rd place, and that's perhaps not a surprise, but that was a big slide for Rick Helms, who now drops to 3rd position. Beasley, 1.7 seconds off the lead. Grandy is next in line, by the way, for Rick Helms, but this was the slide. If ever there was sort of, well, if ever you thought that he was going to try and come back again on Neil Canning and try and repass him, then it was ended there in just a few moments. That was very quickly ended indeed. David Traynor, meantime, tries to pass Mike Grandy. Grandy thought he was going to get towards the front, then he's going to have to battle past these guys first. This battle for fourth is very fierce as Randy Shoemake seems to have had trouble here. And the caution comes out, 21 laps to go, and Randy Shoemake brings out the second caution of the day.
Indeed, not ideal at all there for Randy Shoemake, but the fact that there was like 6 cars battling for P4, something was telling me that something was going to go wrong, and unfortunately it was Randy Shoemake in the number 3 that brought out the caution. And of course things get neutralised, and then hopefully we'll be back underway very, very shortly. 55 laps now, well 54 have been completed on lap 55, and Douglas Beasley is in the pits once again. Let's see what happens here. Of course, Randy Shoemake in the number 3, making his way through, and a little bit of a tap there from the 89. That, of course, being JC Hay.
Yeah, that'd certainly be putting the blame there, I would imagine, and perhaps rightly so as well for JC Hay. Into the pit lane for Douglas Beasley, by the way, changing tyres again, I would assume. Mike Grandy is in as well, perhaps unsurprisingly. Wonder how much difference those tyres are going to make in the last 20 laps, because if this is a pretty caution-filled final 20 laps, then track position is going to become very important. And in any case, Neil Canning looks pretty difficult to pass anyway. That's John Payne, by the way, getting back onto the lead lap, because he's the first car 1 lap down. Or is he going back to 1 lap down from 2 laps down? I think it might indeed be that.
Yeah, I think it was 2, now he's 1. It does get very confusing when you've only got like a 30-second lap, if that. Yes, this over-racing does indeed. But of course, Neil Canning has gone into the pits, and that will mean David Traynor should be able to jump up into 2nd place, and then JC Hay will jump up into P3 unless any of those guys choose to pit as well, as John Marino and Bruce Poole as well have gone into the pit lane. And of course, a lot of them opting for that fresher tyre, and of course we'll see later on if that does pay them dividends, as we do see there Beasley jumping up to P5, Grandy up into P6 now, and Canning should come out in 7th place depending on whereabouts John Payne will be, as I believe he's now on the main lap.
Neil Canning came in as well, so from the lead, so no idea why he didn't come in first time round or whatever, but he's decided to drop back to 7th. Grandy even ahead of him, and I'm not sure I would have taken that call, to be honest, but again, we'll see how much difference the tyres make, because Canning was really struggling on his tyres actually towards the end of that first stint, and you know, if that was going to be the case again, then he was actually going to end up doing more laps on that second stint than he did on the first. And so it makes sense when you think of it like that, but he has given up a lot of track position here as the lights go off on the pace car.
Certainly, and of course the likes of Helms, trainer JC Hay will be hoping for as many cautions as humanly possible to get them to the end of this race on those Warner tyres, as they all line up and get ready to go once again. Lap 58 of 75, heading on to lap 59, and then of course only around 20 laps to go of racing.
10 to be precise over the line, and 9 on the lead lap. John Payne hoping for 1 more caution to get himself onto the lead lap proper as well. He'll be a force to be reckoned with if he does. Frank Butler, meanwhile, drops to the low. He's trying to get out of the way, but best thing to do is get to the start-finish line before you do that. There's a big stack up on the outside line. Randy Shoemake not having his best day as Grandy tries to go round him. Neil Canning will try and do the same as well. And there goes Grandy on the outside line. He's already, and trouble in the background. That's Beasley, I think, heading up the circuit and into the wall, but will stay green. He's still pointing the right way.
Yep, that's good indeed. Of course, that could have easily been another caution here on track, but the top 2 getting very close indeed, as Mike Grandy now making another move, this time ahead of JC Hay. Of course, Mike Grandy is on the newer tyre, so that should give him some advantage here for the remaining 14 laps of this race. Of course, Helms leads ahead of Traynor in 2nd. Grandy will be looking to make more moves as well. Neil Canning in P6 currently will be looking to try and make his way further up, and that was just a loss of grip there, loss of oversteer heading through into that final corner for Douglas Beasley. And of course, I've got to say, a very good job to actually get the car pointing back in a straight line, because these Truck Series cars, if you lose the rear, it is so difficult to get it back into a straight line.
And once they're going, they're very difficult indeed. 12 laps to go at the line, and Rick Helms is showing that track position may indeed be the one that wins out here. Neil Canning only just getting past Randy Shoemake to get back in the top 5 now. Might have made a bit of a miscalculation here. I think, you know, in a longer race here at Bristol, you can certainly make that work with the newer tyres, but Canning might have left himself just a bit too much to do here.
Certainly, it will be a very difficult race now for Canning because there's only 10 laps left. About a minute ago, there was about 14. So laps do go down very quickly here in these races. As Bruce Paul makes a move, Mike Grandy ahead of David Traynor. I think that was definitely a move that was more of a when, not an if, as Grandy in the number 12 goes into second place. And then, of course, it's now the battle between him and Rick Helms in the number 75 with 9 laps to go. And this was the move up the inside. Textbook move there by Mike Grandy. And it didn't seem like David Traynor even tried to defend that one. He'd rather, you know, sit in third place and end up coming under pressure and possibly having a bit of contact.
Playing up the inside here of JC Hay will unlap himself from him, but he's just trying to stay as the first car 1 lap down, and he will get back on the lead lap. John Marino, I think, has had trouble here in car 23. So we might actually get 1 car back on the lead lap and 1 car back off of it again. And indeed, Marino, well, he was showing down the pit lane there, but I think he was just recovering down from the low side. So 8 to go when the caution flag flew. It's going to be a very quick and short restart. Oh, and Marino was slapped there by Jerry Kerr, it was. He's a lap down. Kerr got very loose indeed, and Marino was an innocent bystander in that one.
Indeed, a big shame there for Marino, who drops down to 9th place in this race, as we have 6 laps left to go in this one. Lap 69 of 75. Helms still in the lead. Mike Grandy will be quite happy with this because that gap was around 6/10. It's now being brought down to just under 2. And of course, if Grandy can get a good restart here, as he has been showing all race long with his pace, this could certainly work in his favour. But of course, Neil Canning in P5 has an opportunity as well to try and launch for a podium. But of course, if we get going next lap or the lap after, you're not going to have that much time at all. Around 2 minutes maximum.
Yeah, exactly. It's when you've got 15-second laps, you start to realise just what a short restart this is actually going to be here. 6 to go as they cross here. Is it going to be lights off this time? I think so. No, it's not. Can't see.
One more.
So 4 laps to go it will be when we go back green. But the difference to this restart, I think, Nathan, to the last one, not least the amount of laps remaining, a lot shorter laps remaining, but also because we've got Grandy on the outside of the front row, Canning on the inside of the third row. Surely going to have too much traffic in 4 laps. Grandy, though, has only got to make 1 pass, and he'll restart alongside the pass that he has to make.
Yeah, certainly. And of course, Grandy was on that newer tyre compared to Rick Helms, so that should give him some sort of an advantage. As Jerry Kerr drops back once again, not sure if he's made another mistake somewhere on circuit or if there's a little bit of a glitch there behind for 11th and 12th. But we do see the rear view of Rick Helms. Of course, Grandy will be looking to try and get something done, but won't have that long at all, as I'm sure the pace car will be heading in this lap surely as the cars all close together. For one last time in this race, the pace car will peel into the pits, and Grandy on the outside, Rick Helms up the inside. Of course, Grandy's got to get this move made ASAP.
Will do as well with this with these new tyres, but let's see how Rick Helms can hold on the low side there. The track position certainly has given him a good opportunity so far. Look at the way he's chasing him up the banking there through 3 and 4 as well. He wants to dive down here off of 4, use the slope a little bit to help him get away. Let's see if he can. He leaves it a long time, and it allows Grandy to... Oh, my word! Rick Helms going nowhere. There's a big stack up. We might well be going to green-white checker here as there was a spin on the inside. I don't think we're going to get caution, though. 4 to go. Grandy leads. That was not a good restart for Rick Helms at all. JC Hay and Bruce Poole now both go past.
Indeed, looked more like a misjudgment or some sort of issue there for Rick Helms as he drops down to 4th place as Neil Canning glues in a couple of spots. And look at the start there. JC Hay flew past as all those on the inside line just stuck there because of what happened to Rick Helms. Of course, still sits in P4, and we do have yellows out once again.
Goodness me. It's going to be a green-white checker. You only get 1 attempt in this series, by the way, so the next attempt will be the last one. But this race is going to go on further than the 75 laps, and of anybody, that's not what Mike Grandy wanted to see, because he was out front leading pretty comfortably there.
Yep, certainly, and has to try and defend off JC Hay once again. Of course, JC Hay was the one that followed him through on that last restart, and I actually think the car that got into trouble was Neil Canning, as he did drop down to P9. John Payne back into the pits along with Canning as well, so maybe it was those two that came to a bit of contact. And of course, those two were leading the race earlier on, P1 and P2. but now going to be down to probably last and last. So big shame for those two. But of course, as the race will continue on. And what happened here? Neil Canning, was it a mistake by his own, or did he get collected there?
The inside of Beasley, and he goes for a spin on the inside. Ooh, just about avoided. And that, I think, was it for bringing out the caution. That's how it happened. Yeah, I know, yeah. But, you know, this is what happens in iRacing sometimes. You get away with some spins when you can't believe it's not been a caution, and sometimes a very soft spin brings out a caution. And, you know, if Grandy doesn't go on to win this race, he'll be very upset watching that replay, I think, at what caused the final caution. But in any case, he's on the pretty new tyres here. He's in a good position. He's just got to hold off JC Hay, Bruce Paul and Rick Helms, who are on the first two rows with him, for just 2 laps on this green-white checker attempt. Or indeed, if there's a very quick caution, then the race will end under caution. There's only one attempt.
Indeed, and the pace car continues on once again, so I presume next lap we should get back underway for a couple more laps in this race, and Mike Grandy will be quite happy, I think, once it's over, because he's had a lot of pressure on him all race long. Of course, was fighting back from a little bit further behind earlier on. Of course, had likes of John Payne and Neil Canning to battle with, and now has JC Hay and Bruce Poole on the back of him. But of course, with it only being 2 laps of them to race, Hay and Poole will be looking to get a move on as quickly as possible. So this could certainly not work in Grandy's favour. He's got to get a good run off the start-finish straight, and then of course just trying to lead out of turn 1 and hopefully cruise to a win. 2 laps, that's what, 30 seconds?
Yeah. Pretty much shows you what these races, late restarts at Bristol are like. It's going to end up being an 80-lap race here tonight with the green-white checker, so already should have just enough fuel. It's not a long circuit, as I say, so get away pretty comfortably with those a bit less fuel. Some of the other races we're going to have over the course of this season. Pace car will pull in a moment, and we'll be underway for one final time here at Bristol. The 60 Plus Racing Adventures Truck Series for round 2 here from Bristol, set to be settled with a green-white checkered finish. Mike Grandy, who won at Rockingham last week, is going to restart on the front. JC Hay goes nowhere pretty much. Rick Helms goes on the outside. He's taking on the role that JC Hay took on in the previous restart, but Grandy gets off to a brilliant restart here. Helms around the outside looking for second. White flag, 1 lap to go here from Bristol, and Grandy is going to try and hold off these two who are battling for second just in behind him. Helms versus JC Hay. After the poor restart, Hay looks like he's holding on well on the inside here for second position, but it's going to be Mike Grandy, who wins twice in 2 weeks at the start of this Truck Series campaign, and JC Hay, who just hangs on for second. In the end, it was all in the launch for Mike Grandy. Pretty much as he got away, back underway after that caution and on that restart, he knew he was going to win, and he takes the checker flag in first to win for the second time at the start of this season.
Indeed, and I think Rick Helms will be quite relieved with that one. Of course, had a really poor restart on the penultimate one and cost him, I think, down to P5, P6, but in the end finished third, so really good there for Helms to recover and take a podium. But Mike Grandy, some brilliant pace, and comes home there with the win. A big shame, though, for Neil Canning, who looked in control for a majority of the race. A few mistakes at the end, cautions at the wrong time, made him finish down in P6.
0.4 of a second is Mike Grandy's gap at the line ahead of JC Hay and Rick Helms, who had that great battle on that final restart. Bruce Poole and David Traynor round out the front 5 with Neil Canning in 6th position. He'll be brewing that error, I think, of pitting a little bit earlier than maybe he should have done, or under a caution where he shouldn't have done. Then it was John Payne, Randy Shoemake, John Marino and Douglas Beasley who rounded out the top 10. 11th place went to Frank Butler, 3 laps down. Jerry Kerr was 4 laps down at the end of that race. Well, let's have a chat to some of the drivers, shall we? Start with JC Hay, who finishes in 2nd place at the end here tonight. JC, welcome in. Good to have you with us, and thanks for coming to chat to us. How was that late race restart? You got a green-white checker here tonight from Bristol, and you held on quite nicely for 2nd position. Tell us about those final couple of laps.
Yeah, I'm happy with that finish for sure. This is a great group of guys that we have in 60 plus. It's always fun to race with these guys. We definitely, go tooth and nail when it comes to racing, but It's just a great time. It's a lot of fun. That's what I'm here for. Just to have the fun, race with these guys. Like I said, it's great to have a group of guys that, you know what I mean, they just race tight. That's so. But thanks to you guys, man, for, you know, the coverage and stuff for the race. So it was a great track. It was a great run tonight. Not a lot of cautions for what I was thinking it was going to be. So
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that actually, because we've done this race a couple of times now in the last couple of seasons here on RaceSpotTV of the truck series, or indeed, well, any sort of oval series really. It's been caution-free actually quite often. I mean, green flag pit stops throughout the middle of the race when you'd expect to see them, but maybe wouldn't expect to see so many pit stops happen under green. And then there's some late race cautions, of course, as I suppose you expect, but not sure how many laps there were in the middle there where it was green flag running, but it was completely clean. I mean, how do you expect these races to go compared to how they end up going, and how does it change your thinking on the fly? Because you must plan for green flag running in one sense, but it still be a surprise when it arrives.
this race was set up so that it was pretty close on fuel. You know, towards the end, we had just enough fuel if we pitted once, you know, to make it to the end. So if we'd have had more than one green white checker, but we're set up for just one green white checker, some of us probably would have ran out of fuel. A couple guys actually did run out of fuel at the halfway point and had to coast into the pit. So
saw Mike Grandy just coasting his way in on the way in, but it didn't end up mattering for him in any case. But JC, thanks for coming to chat to us at the end of this race tonight, as always, and thanks for congratulations, I should say, on second place.
Sure thing, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
So much. It's JC Hay finishes in second place here tonight from Bristol. We'll just hang on for a moment, see if any of the other drivers will pop into the waiting room. But Nathan, that was a great late race restart. I mean, these 2-lap runs towards the finish have their detractors and they have their advantages as well. But that was a good green flag run towards the finish, and in the end, Mike Grandy overcame running out of fuel in that race to winning. You don't see drivers running out of fuel often in green flag running at Bristol and still recover to win the race. So that's a great job from him tonight.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, of course, like I said before, very new to, you know, this sort of oval racing and here at Bristol Motor Speedway, but it was a really good race. Of course, you know, action constantly, and that's what's good about these, you know, shorter format tracks, you know, where you're going 15, 16 seconds max lap, makes the action really interesting, and it also puts you into a position where you never know who's going to win the race. Even though there's always going to be favourites, anybody can take an advantage of a situation and come home with the win. But a great race from Grandy to take home the win. And of course, JC Hay, who when I joined about lap 15 in, was in the midfield, didn't have that much pace, but sometimes it proves that pace isn't the only element to being able to take a podium.
Absolutely. But in the end, it is Grandy who takes the victory here tonight. Unfortunately, none of the other drivers have come to join us for a chat, which is a bit of a shame, but there you have it. That is the 60 Plus Racing Adventures Truck Series here from Bristol here tonight. Unfortunately, we don't have any more RaceSpotTV broadcasted races, but there are still plenty more races to come. Continuing on next week from Kansas, where we'll be racing for 75 laps on that 1.5 mile intermediate track. So join in if you can, and that one September the 30th. For now, though, from myself, Ian O'Leary, Nathan Richards alongside me, Romero Augustin Cisneros, it's goodbye from Bristol, and a congratulations to Mike Grandy, who wins round 2 of the 60 Plus Racing Adventures Truck Series here tonight. We'll be back, of course, in the coming weeks here on RaceSpotTV with some more 60 Plus Racing Adventures racing. For now, from all of us from Bristol, it's goodbye.